Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about growing curry leaves in a pot. The curry leaf plant that you're seeing is about 6 years old. For 6 years you would think that it should have been a lot bigger, which is probably true, and I'm going to share with you my experience that might help you grow your curry leaf plant more effectively. First of all, I live in a country that has colder weather for the most part. So it's not possible for me to plant this outside. So I had to keep this in a pot inside for most of the year, and I have it on wheels as you see, so that it makes me easy to move it in and out of the house. It took about 4 years for me to realize that it's important that we focus on multiple areas of growing a curry leaf plant. So I want to talk about those areas. Those areas being, potting the plant, fertilizer, sunlight, and watering and pruning. Potting. So let's talk about potting the plant. So as you notice that I got a big pot because it's about 6 years old now. The plant has grown 6 years bigger, but I started off with a small plant. So let's start talking about how important the potting the plant is. It's important that you start with a smaller size pot and change it as it grows bigger. Otherwise, you're probably not going to retain the moisture, all other nutrients if you end up with a bigger pot and the plant is smaller. The other important thing is to aerate the soil every few months so that the soil doesn't get too tightened, preventing all the nutrients for the roots. When I moved this pot, like say, when it was in a smaller pot to a bigger one, I pretty much, took most of the soil out, loosened it a little bit, kept some of the old soil, but then I put some new soil in and, loosened the soil and then pretty much planted it. The other important thing that you got to realize when you're planting is don't plant it too deep. So if you notice that, I'll get it a little closer, you notice that the roots are a little bit outside, when it started growing. So I kept it, somewhat at the top, didn't go too deep into the soil, because that's also important that, you don't plant it too deep. You can even see some of the roots like I showed you. So the other thing is also, if you have some kind of mulch or something, maybe throw a little bit of a layer of that on the top. It kind of helps you to retain the moisture when it's hot weather. So that's about potting. As you see, I got it in a bigger pot now, but when I got it, it was literally very small, like as small as this size. So, and I had it in a very small pot, then started changing pots probably every other year, and then started it, and now it's at a point that it's this big, and I think this size is good enough for me for the next few years. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the fertilizer. So I didn't fertilize it for the initial few months, maybe years. Then I started realizing that probably staying indoor, it probably is not getting everything that it needs. So I started adding some organic fertilizer. So I bought some fertilizer from the store, mixed it, and started adding fertilizer to it. One thing we did about fertilizer is I used kind of a plastic can or a milk can, that if you have any, and put a little bit of small hole at the bottom, and then kind of used it as the trip method. So pour the fertilizer in, pour the water in, and it starts dripping in at the bottom, and then it releases the fertilizer slowly. So it kind of helped it so that I'm not pouring all the fertilizer in one shot that gets drained out. The other area is sunlight. As you see, I already moved the plant indoor because it's kind of getting cold in my area. So, but it's staying close to the window during the winter days. And then I kind of move it outside during the summer. It's important that it gets enough sunlight. And I didn't have it. I kept it indoor when I had it for a couple of years, never moved it outdoor. Was worried about the plant. But then once I moved it indoor, boom, it started coming out pretty quickly. So I realized that I need to leave it outdoors in summer and not worry about getting too much heat or things like that. So make sure that you give enough sunlight for it to grow faster. And the next thing I want to talk about is watering. As you noticed, I got the pot and the soil was not filled all the way up to the top, so I kind of leave a little area for the watering so that I can water it enough and it drains out. And at the bottom I kind of have the drain catcher, so excess water kind of sits there and doesn't drain to the floor. So it's important that you water it, but don't water it too much, right? So because if you water it too much, then the excess moisture could also impact plant growth. So make sure that you water it enough. Maybe I'll do like twice a week, and then in summer it's probably 3 times a week. So that's good enough. You don't have it kept soaking all the time. That's not a good idea. The other important aspect, and it's a very important one, is making sure as it grows, you start pruning the leaves, or cutting the leaves and take the leaves off. As you start doing that, you notice that it'll start growing and new leaves pretty faster. I was afraid of doing it initially, but boy, once I started doing it, it started coming out with new leaves. Like you see, I start taking off, and you probably would see it if I move closer, like all those things have taken off. I take off those, probably I'd say at this point I'm taking like every week, because it's kind of now grown up, so it helps me to get curly leaves out of it every week. But when it was initially probably a year old, a 1-year-old plant, I'd start taking the leaves off. Even at some point you might want to cut the branch at the top, because otherwise you're just going to have one long stem. Whereas in my case, you notice that I got a few branches going here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and so it's important that you start getting rid of those things so that it can come up with new branches, and it gets very leafy. So that's about what I realized growing curry leaves. And in the last year or so, when I started following these things, it has significantly made a difference. So I thought it's important that I share this with you, and anyone who's planning to grow curry leaves in a pot, it's important you pay attention to these things. And you also notice that now it has got new sprouts come out of it. There are about 6 of them. So I'm going to be talking about how to take these out and put in another plant, another pot, so that either you have an extra curry leaf, or maybe you can give it to your friends or sell it. So I'm going to make a video of taking the new plant out and putting it in another new pot, and you probably can see how I do that. Alright, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you soon.